I just don't have, I can't pull it up.
So maybe we have to bump it.
Okay, we're on.
Calling order the city council meeting of September 25th, 2024. Good evening, everyone, council, our audience. Would you all please, well, let's first call the order.
Mr. Newell? Ms. Atroff?
Here.
Ms. Weldon?
Here.
Ms. Goodrich? Here. Mr. Lemay? Mr. Gentili? Dr. Wong? Here.
All right. Would you please all join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening again. Our first agenda item this evening is we engage again our discussion of possible city hall renovation. As council will recall, at our last get-together, it was requested by council that Mr. Deutsch re-engage on a backdoor alternative. I'll let him describe what happened. I welcome Paul back this evening. Just so, yeah, we don't have a table for you, Paul. I apologize if after you're done presenting, if you want to pull a chair up to be more comfortable if council has questions. We also have with us council tonight, our chair of ABR, Hassan Gardezi, and Dick Wallach, our architectural advisor. They've also seen both iterations, and they've asked if they can provide some comment to inform council also about that. So, Paul?
Bear with me, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, shit.
Oh, you share.
We can share.
Did you get one? Melanie didn't.
Here,
I didn't
oh,
hear
here it
it.
is. Did I not
Here it
get
is.
enough?
Oh,
That's
sorry.
There's more.
Okay.
No, I brought enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this here.
If you have an extra, why don't you give them to,
Well, Jim might.
Who else would want
Jim
that?
will need it.
Well, we'll scan it too.
Well, there's more here. We can leave them behind first.
Look there.
I want to just pull out a little bit. Sorry. Apparently the laser pointer doesn't work on the TV monitor.
Well, once we
Yeah.
turn the lights out, we'll at least check.
So.
yeah, Hassan, could you please hit those lights? It'll be easier to see the television. Yeah, thank you. I think that does it.
Wow.
She knows what I'm talking about.
The TV absorbs the mouse or the laser pointer. We'll say.
We worked without it last time, so here we go.
All right.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So just as a reminder, where we were last time, these are.
I'm going to have to ask you to speak up, Paul, because you have a quiet, dignified voice. And this is a big open room.
Second part of that. Okay, so again, thanks for having us back this time. As you remember, last time we presented a scheme that was part of a feasibility study in order to look at different opportunities, different ways in order to expand this council chamber, which is far too small. And also, since, and we'll get to that, you asked us about the size, the capacity, and we did some more research and looking at some of your neighbors, some of our other city halls around, looking at their populations, the sizes of their council chambers as well. So this is just as a reminder where we left off last time. And you had asked us to look at a scheme two, we'll call this scheme one, just to keep things clear. And we created a scheme two, which is what would happen if we put the addition on the back of the building. And we also estimated costs for that so that we can compare the two schemes on that basis. So if as you remember, we showed you this site has a lot of the utilities identified on, and it was one of the reasons why we didn't look at putting the addition in the back the first time, because there's a lot in the way and it costs a lot of money to reroute and to do all that. Also puts the building out of service for a short amount of time as well. So just as that reminder. So this, what we will call scheme 2, is you can see the shaded area to the left. So Shaker Boulevard would be to the top, the parking lot, and you can see the fire station over there to the left. Thank you, Christy. So this is just like an aerial sort of site plan, just showing what the extent of it would be on the rear of the building. So if we go to the next one, and now we've rotated it the other way because this is the way the floor plans are rotated. So to the top of the plan, we created, you'll see this is the lower level. So because we would still build basement under the space just because of the grade change anyway, just sort of by default, you get that space. So we would propose to move the building department into that space, use the existing building department space as record storage, and we also are going to need more mechanical space. But we also, on this level, the most important part of it is really this vestibule and vertical circulation. You have a question?
Yeah, could you say that part again? I'm having a hard time keeping up with you.
Oh, okay. So let me back up for a second.
Yeah.
So as we discussed last time when we were looking at an addition to the front of the building, really the same thing applies, where because of the relationship of this floor elevation to grade, by the time we dig for the foundations, we have basement anyway. So both this scheme and scheme 1 also expanded the basement by the same area as we were expanding the council chambers. And so what that would provide, again, is an expanded space for the building department, a place that has actually real natural light, real windows instead of, kind of basement window wells as exists now. And to the left of that, you can see the lobby and the vestibule, which, face out here into the parking lot behind us.
So is the dark black
Dark
new?
black are the new lines,
The new
are the
line.
new part of it,
Okay.
yes, sir. And so in the lobby, if you look you can see in the middle, there's the elevator in the middle, which is a front and back opening elevator in order to be able to change levels. To the left are steps getting down to the basement level, and to the right are stairs from that lobby to get up to this level. And so that would land, right outside this room, actually. So let's go to this floor. So now you can see the part of the council chamber to the bottom where the fireplace is, which is where we are now. And to the top of the sheet or to the south is that same building expansion area. And you can see also the vestibule, which is a 2-story space, which has to be for the vertical circulation. So we also, as I mentioned earlier, we looked at a few other communities around here, and also looked at, in your case, what was the population of Pepper Pike when this was originally built? And according to the census, we found it was about 875 or 874. And today, you're almost 7,000 people. In Olmsted Falls, which is, we tried to find communities that were, 6,000 to 10,000 residents. So those are your customers. How can we serve them? And they have a chamber capacity that's 150. Highland Heights, which I've actually been in the other ones, in Highland Heights, their population is a little larger, and they have a council chamber that will seat 75 residents. And Orange Village will seat 70. So what we're proposing is about that size. We're showing anywhere from 60 to 70 seats, depending on how you would lay out the room. So just as a reminder for folks who may not be familiar, who haven't spent any time back here, this is what the back of the building looks like now. So you can see on the left, you can see the handicap ramp in the foreground, and then some mechanical equipment against the building. Those 2 windows that are there now are what go into the meeting room below here. And then in the right picture, you can see the lift, elevator, whatever we want to call that. So let's go to the next. And then this is just a snapshot of what the elevation of the back might look like. One of the things I want to point out, though, that in doing this addition in the back of the building, it would mean that during construction, you would lose all handicap accessibility for the building for the duration. So it would mean we would have to devise some temporary means of making that happen, which we really haven't figured out. It's kind of early for that, but we do think that that's something that's important. It has to be considered in the budget. So
I think that we just hold meetings elsewhere. We've done it at Pepper Pike Learning Center
But it's
before. I
not-
don't
it's
know
not
that
just
it
for
would be a
these
complete
meetings.
barrier.
It's for the accessibility to the building. So you wouldn't have accessible access to any level of this building. because that elevator would have to come off the building.
I think that there could be a solution though. We just have to hunt
Yeah,
for
I mean,
it.
we barely have accessibility now, if we're being honest.
Right, but it's actually against code, so we would.
I understand, we would,
Right,
but I'm
right.
sure you guys could figure out.
And we also, between the estimate for the front and the estimate for the back, including those things, this is about $400,000 to $500,000 more to build this in the back of the building. It's a lot more complicated. And it also because we're probably having to spend $50,000 to $100,000 just to solve the accessibility problems, building a temporary stair, maybe putting stair lifts in that would go away later. So go to the next slide. And again, just as a reminder, with whichever scheme we end up with, we're of course going to be respectful to the Georgian classical architecture of this building. So these are sort of, this plate is sort of like our guidelines for that we always go back to. And we also looked at some other Georgian architecture, other buildings. And as we go back and remind ourselves of the previous scheme, there's plenty of precedent for what we were looking at before, which is putting this portico on the front of the building, front porch, loggia, whatever you want to call it. So we also, excuse me, pardon me. So this is a rendering of what this would look like, but you really have to be in the right place to even get this view. You sort of have to kind of be way in the back here between the fire station, and to the right is the police garage. And then the next one is just looking at it more of an angle. So this thing, even projecting from the building, even with the canopy and the vestibule, you have to really get back in here to even see this. It's very, very lost.
What is the tower?
The tower is just a radio tower.
Oh.
That's back.
The one that we currently have right out here.
We
But it
figured that.
doesn't look like that.
No,
It's
Hey,
just,
look, here
it's
you
like
go.
a
Here it is.
placeholder.
Here, if you look here, it's in this picture there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But this is just a secondary entrance. We're not making it our front, it's just another entrance. Correct?
Well, this would be the accessible entrance for anybody coming to the.
Sure,
to the
sure.
conference
But
chambers.
that's
Because
what
it-
it is now.
That's what it is now, because it's close to parking.
Well, it's sort of. Okay, so let's look at the next slide now. So just as a reminder of where we were before, and we actually did a little bit of work on this too, because we heard some feedback about this being too glassy if you did this. And I mean, we like this, but we heard that, and so we looked at some other options. It's just a front view of that, and then another where instead of it being as glassy, we're filling it in with the windows with a panel at the bottom that matches the other windows, and putting muntins in those windows. And then we looked at it. Here's another view of that. And then we looked at what it would look like if it was brick under there with the punch windows, which we really don't. I almost hesitated to show it, but we did the work, so we wanted to share that with you. So at the end of the day, we think that the addition, we think this is the right thing to do, to put this in the front of the building. It actually enhances the building. It makes a much more gracious public entrance to the building. It's an obvious entrance. And in the back, it's just, it's again, bringing handicapped people through the back door, which is just, in our world, is a no-no. You have to treat disabled people the same as everyone else. You have to
Now
have the
we're
same
making
ability.
them walk. I'm sorry, but we're making
The
them.
accessibility is not any different than coming in there.
Yes, it is.
Well, where are they going to park?
They're gonna park in the lot up front, and they're gonna come across the walk.
That's very far. That's a far,
Wait,
You're-
before we get into an argument, why
Okay.
don't we just
It's
let
not an
Paul make his
argument. It's not an
presentation?
argument. It's
no, but it
conversation.
sounds like a decision has been made based on something that is
decision
not
was made, but-
necessarily true.
There's no decision. He's not making any
Recommendations,
Okay.
and
decisions.
I will listen.
I would regard the other as a decent solution to the wrong idea. I think putting this addition on the back of the building, putting this vestibule and sticking it all in the back is totally the wrong decision.
But just to clarify, when some people comment, it's not argument, depending on their gender. It is not argument, it's just conversation.
Well, I
Let's
will tell you
proceed.
that,
Let's proceed.
we did meet with the architecture board of review informally again, and I can let them speak for themselves, but it was unanimous that from all of us design professionals, that this was clearly the right solution to.
Oh, I'm just referring to the reference of it as an argument. not to your presentation.
Okay, just go forward.
So I think we're about through.
We
So they
just
just-
had a reminder of the.
So just as a reminder, this was the plan previously, which is a much cleaner, easier to understand, easier to navigate approach and circulation to and in the building.
And
so
then you
that-
have rough estimates for each plan? I know you
Yes.
said the difference in price, but
Yeah, so the difference, the first estimate, and this is without all of the AV and all that, was $1.3 million. So by the time we do the AV and you have professional services and everything else to do with it, that's about $1.5 million project. That's what the current indicated cost is. To do it in the rear is about $500,000 more.
okay.
A lot of that is in the site work, temporary conditions, and we're also, doing a lot more demolition in the back because we have the, the ramp, the elevator, and all of that kind of stuff that, we were gonna take the elevator off anyway, but we're also, you can't see, there's the stair that leads down to the basement. That all has to be torn off the building too, in order to make way for the addition in the back.
So what, sort of rough estimate on time for completion of each project in its entirety? Is that hard to say or?
Not really. I think that either way, it's probably, building this in front is probably, from the time we break ground to finish, is about a year and in back, about 2 months long. So
Okay.
it's, 12 months to 14 months.
And you mentioned that the newer plan would be more disruptive to employees
Employees.
of City
visitors,
Hall, like everyone coming in.
Employees, folks
Okay.
coming, and I think one of
Would
the,
they still be able to work in the building while that was going on?
yes, they just
Okay.
would, and they, yes, they would. The
Okay.
building would still be operational, it's just the access would be difficult.
Okay,
And in particular, in the lower level where the building department is, my understanding, that's where the most comings and goings happen any day of the week. So that's a place where we want to make sure that it's, customer friendly, easy to find and easy to get in and out.
I have a question regarding the accessibility issue, because when you first came and gave us your first presentation, I thought it was really elegant, and I really, the idea of, giving accessibility through the front door and not the back door really resonated with me. After the fact, I had a conversation with Jim, who pointed out, sort of to your point where, yes, that may be sort of the ideal. You want everyone to have access in the front door. You don't want to make anyone go through the rear door. But he told me a story about a relative who was disabled in some way, and how to them it would be, what's the shortest distance from where I have to park to where I get into the building? So how do you reconcile those
So
two
we have another idea.
concerns?
Go back to the site plan, which we haven't drawn this yet, but
Okay,
one of the ideas we had, because we didn't want to spend too much time on the other screen, we wanted to focus
Sure.
on scheme 2. So it's hard to show here, but one of the things we thought about doing was actually putting a driveway in a circle in front of the building off of Shaker that would have some handicap parking right at the front door.
okay. So that so people could park right there, and then it would be a really smooth entrance.
Right. And it's also a place, even if somebody wants to drop you off and then they want to park there too.
Okay.
You can be dropped off at the front.
I have a question.
There's plenty of.
And
plenty of
so there's
yards
enough
to do it,
space
plenty.
to do that? Okay,
There are obviously different levels of handicap
Right.
and, people's difficulties. With scheme 1, there is still handicap access in the rear, as I understand it, right?
That's correct.
So if someone has, what nature of disability, they'd still be able to park as near as possible to the building
But-
and come through the bottom?
Yeah, and they
Or
can come,
no?
they'll still be able to use this ramp and come into the basement level the way they do now. And then let's pull up the
The elevator.
lower level of that scheme. Christie. Thank you. There we go. So I wish the pointer worked, but the back door at the very top, thank you, Christie. That's at grade because of the ramp that we built. I don't remember how many years ago now. And so then you can come in that door down the hall and get in this elevator to go up inside the building.
so it should be 2 accessible entrances?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
there's an accessible entrance to the basement level at grade in the back. Because you have it now, that wouldn't change. In this scheme, there would really be no work to the back of the building other than having to take the elevator off the outside of the building and attach the wall,
okay.
the existing elevator, I should say.
Can you talk to me about the elevator and what grade that's going to be? Because if I recall from our last conversation, it was a residential grade elevator. Is that what we're anticipating, and why would we choose that over?
It was really about the cost and the infrequency of its use. So to do an elevator like this is probably a $25,000-$30,000 piece of equipment, and to do a full commercial elevator is more like $100,000.
But which is the right way to do it? And I think frequency of use isn't necessarily fair. We've had somebody on council who was injured that all of a sudden needed to use it very frequently. So, you know, we don't know who we're keeping away because of the lack of accessibility at this point. So I don't know that
That's
that's
a good question. And all things being equal, if money was no object, I would recommend the more commercial grade elevator. So
With
it's
a-
just about what can the budget support? So we were trying to come at this, what is the most prudent, cost-effective way to solve this problem, yet still create a really nice design that everybody can be proud of.
And that would be self-operable. Nobody would be
Yes.
relying on anyone else to use it.
That's correct. Either way, yes.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Is there any opportunity to have a heated bathroom down here near the community room so people can use, and maybe on the weekends, maybe lock it so that, or keep that part open so people can go to the bathroom in the wintertime from the park and
I
trails?
think there is that
Because
possibility.
I think if we're gonna do the extension, the main thing is, at least for me, the heated bathroom, because people are gonna be coming to use the trail in the winter. And last year we had a porta potty, which is a great temporary solution. But if we're putting all this money into a new extension, I would think the community room would need a bathroom anyway.
Well, I think
And then,
Or
the logical place to do it would be where Paul's office is now, because the kitchen is right there and there's plumbing. So in moving the building department and, you know, maybe we create an office out of part of the records room, and then that leaves us the space in order to create that
and you
that
have a
bathroom.
double
And what
door.
we can do is the door to the outside can
Right.
remain unlocked, and then we can put a door back where we took the one out a little further down, Christie. Yeah, there.
So, or
the-
alternatively, weren't you going to give, I thought you said that it wouldn't be that expensive to winterize at our last meeting, our current bathroom, or do we do?
No, I didn't. I was actually asked that question. I can't.
We came up with about
It was about
$45,000.
$50,000 to do it, because none of the walls are insulated, the ceiling's not insulated, so
Okay.
we have to kind of,
So it would
Take it
be
apart.
more cost effective to put it on the back of the building.
I think so.
Okay,
I think,
that's,
yeah.
I mean, that's, I'm just asking.
No, I think you're right. I think, building a unisex handicap bathroom inside this building would cost way less than $50,000.
And we could have outside access during certain hours that we then close it.
Yeah, because we can put a door back on the end of that hallway that's locked, so you can leave the outside door locked. We would put the door in the bathroom off of that little hallway, so nobody has to come all the way into the building in order to use it.
Okay.
Does that make, without my point, I'm saying the pointer work.
You could have like
Okay.
a code on the door.
Now,
You could.
I do have a question, because I've attended meetings, for example, at Orange on numerous occasions, and it's usually pretty empty. Which is, they have the ability to have that space when they need it. So how did we get to this size? Because originally council had really just requested an elevator attached to the building, possibly a modest addition or space redesign. And I'm not sure how we got to this very big plan. I've heard tales from maybe 15 years ago from other council people that they had a problem with a lot of the expenditures that were happening in these buildings. And I don't want to be that council. So I'm just curious how we got to this plan, because it seems quite a bit more grand than council had ever contemplated. And some of the space, I'm curious if we need it, including some of we didn't get into as much detail on the workspace, but how people work today, hybrid, shared spaces. And we don't really have a lot of people here during the day. So I'm just curious how we got to this size.
Well, first of all, it started with this room just being painfully too small. And it is the smallest council chamber, other than, I think Chagrin Falls still has a very small one, of any council chamber in any community around here I've ever seen. And I've been in and out of 30, 40 different council chambers because of my job.
Sure.
And it's hard to present in here. It's actually kind of, I don't know if it's just me, I'm hot and warm. It's just too confined a space for this many people. And I was here many times when we were doing the Landerwood Plaza project. I don't remember, 10 years ago or whatever that was now. And there were times where I was at council meetings and there were people out in the hall and sitting on the floor There
But
was at
that's
least
rare,
100.
to be fair, because because we attend every meeting.
Sure.
Okay, but this is by magnitudes larger, so I'm just curious how we got this large, because Orange does not fill that room, they don't even half fill it. It's, you're talking to an empty room a lot of the time. So, and that's not to say that their meetings aren't interesting, they have a lot of issues, in some ways, with their Pinecrest project, they had more involved issues than we have. So, I know Landerwood was contentious with some people. I didn't realize you had done Landerwood, but
Well, it was that, but it was all, there was, at the same time, I think it was when there was a lot of conversation going on about the beachfront property too. So it wasn't just, I used Lander because that just happened to be why I was here.
okay.
Not as an example for people coming for that particular meeting.
Can we, why don't we get the input from Hassan and Dick, since they're here and they're taking time out of their evening tonight to be here. So Dick and Hassan, can you comment on Plan A or B and give us both of you are architects. So if council doesn't know, Dick Kowalik, who just stood up, Dick is a registered AIA architect. He has served in many years past as the actual member of the Pepper Pike Architectural Board of Review. And when we changed the ordinance some years ago to have advisors to the board, Dick was invited to become one of those advisors to the board, and he has served probably continuously here for many, many years, so he's familiar with our community. And he also serves on the ABR of several other communities, or as an advisor to those ABRs. So Dick, sitting next to him, Hassan Gardezi. If council, some of you don't know Hassan. Hassan, again, is an architect. He's currently the chair of serves as the chair of our ABR. And so we're interested, obviously, in your professional opinions about these things. So.
Why don't you start? Okay, but anyway, I've been on this board since 1994.
That's all.
Architecture Review Board. Yeah, I know. It's been a long time. I've known this building for much longer than that, coming here with drawings when I was a young man. I even know the architect for the original building, Mort Levitt, I believe, and he was a very nice gentleman. And no one was more adamantly against changing the front facade of this building than myself. And I told you that before you even started this project. In fact, I said, don't touch the front of the building. But since we've seen the issues that are involved here, and since we've analyzed this building a little more carefully, we realize there are a number of problems with the existing building. The original central facade with the 3 dormers on it, it's a lovely Georgian style design. The wing to the east of it is kind of clunky, a little heavy-handed, sticks out in front of the entrance to the building. This is a bit of a problem. But nonetheless, we thought we'd leave that alone. We asked them to consider working on the rear of the building, and as many communities have done. And now that we've seen both solutions, we feel that we're frankly very surprised with the front solution, which solves some of the massing issues of the existing building and solves the entrance issues of the existing building. I'm sure we'll still pick on it and tweak it a little bit, but we frankly felt it was an excellent solution to the interior problems, the functional problems, the circulation problems. I think most people do park in the front parking lot, even though the rear is there. And the rear is not a very attractive way to enter a building. But primarily, this is an elegant solution. And I think it actually enhances the building that we have. And I think it addresses some of the problems. I think the idea of putting a handicap turnaround or a U-shaped drive in front is a great idea. I think the idea of entering the building at the front, that's the way it should be. So, and then we saw the rear approach. And frankly, we all thought that was kind of clunky. Yes, it solves the problem, it's a solution, but we're gonna have people walking through an unattractive rear parking lot sometimes because distances, because of the sally ports and the driveways here. It's not a good solution. It's probably acceptable, but it's not good. And we felt this was actually excellent, and I don't say that very often, especially.
I can attest to that.
In fact, Paul, this guy knows me. I've worked on his project many times in the past. We felt this was an excellent solution. I was very pleasantly surprised, and so were my colleagues, Chuck Fazio, Hassan, Bob Smith. We all felt, gosh, this is really good, and it's going to be very attractive, and it's a compliment to the community. So anyway, we all like this solution best. The rear may work, but it's not what you call a solution. It's not a design. It's a Band-Aid. And this takes us further into the future, I think. So that's my feeling. Hassan,
So yeah, thanks.
Hassan is a big commercial architect.
I'm not commercial, I'm healthcare.
Okay.
So what I would say is that I've actually, this is the first time I actually am attending the council meeting, but I do watch from that thing quite often, and I think I completely appreciate the comments which are made by some of the council members here. I mean, at the end of the day, you are the end users, you are the stakeholders, you are elected officials, you have to look at the budget, all that stuff in there. And I think that whenever you engage an architect like us, I think there needs to be there's the programming phase, which I think now a question was asked, how come the scope of the building has evolved to this extent? I think there are crucial discussion about programming, planning. I think working with your architects is a hand-in-hand kind of a process, and I think that needs to take place. So I completely support that. And as an ARB member, ABR, the legal is here, I think I would completely want to work with you. This was presented to us as Architecture Board of Review for our comment on this. I know Bielowski as a firm. I have tremendous respect for them. But at the end of the day, I've been a resident of Pepper Pike for about 7 years. I've been on the ABR for 4 years. So, I mean, I have stake in that as well. I think it's a tremendous community. You just need to look at how it's being run and all the rankings and everything supported. I think this building can use some work. And ever since I've been on ABR, I've been sitting here on a bi-weekly basis. It's very clunky. I think it's outdated. It needs work. And the solution which is presented to us, and this is the one I'm looking at it the first time, and I think some of the initial comments, which are concerns I had in terms of the sheet of glass and reflection and, not really sitting in there. I think that we have tried to address it. I think it's a step in the right direction. But I'm here just to support the two concepts. I mean, option in the back. ADAs and accessibility is not only about accessing to the sites, it's also about dignity. It's about having equal access, equal right. It is not right for someone to have your main entrance here and to be asking people who are, in wheelchairs and others to be using the back entrance. So I think that doesn't really work with the intent of the law. And also, if we as architects are designing and are improving or renovating facilities, I don't think it's the right solution to still be designing about two different set of demographics. And if this building was, look, right now we are in a situation where we are forced to situate the back entry literally at a very awkward position. If we had an opportunity to put a back entry or make an entry in the back, which was more where, on this side, on the other side of the building, perhaps we can look at the parking lot and the urban design and all, and come up with an elegant solution. But right now, literally, if you do something in the back, spend $500,000 more than this one and put something in the back, I think you'll have to tell the people to make a right after the dumpster kind of a situation. Unfortunately, it's not working. I'm not totally against, looking the back of it, but because of the context or physical context of this building, the back entry is just not working. So I don't think that's the right solution as a taxpayer, as an architect, and all. So I think this is the way to go. But I still think that, work with your architect to define it. I mean, look at the scope of it, programming, planning, design of it. But I think this is the right solution to do in the front.
So I have some questions. I'm thrilled that both of you are here. This is very helpful to me that you're here. I have one quick comment about the disability and mobility issue. So I don't know how many people regularly interact with somebody who has a mobility issue. It is not theoretical that for somebody who, if they were sitting here, would look fine to you, but has a significant mobility issue, would need to come in the back if they wanted dignity. So sometimes what we assume is dignity for us is not dignity for them to have to walk down that path, especially because it might, in some cases, not be completely even. It would be challenging and a tripping risk. And the easiest thing would be to have a parking spot. And these are people who look normal, who maybe even drive. But when they get out of their car, they need to have a parking spot close to a door so they can walk the shortest distance. And speaking as somebody who is familiar with that, I think while the back entrance isn't ideal and we don't want to put people through a back entrance, we want to make people actually have accessibility, not just what we in our minds wish they could do, but what they can actually do. And so I do think that piece is very important. And if we come to this, how they find that door, what spaces are there, that there isn't a dumpster right next to the door, and that there is clear direction to get to that space. And then I do have questions about the front, but I don't know if Tony has a comment on the
I just wanted to make
accessibility.
a comment. I think the way that the back entrance is drawn in scheme 2 on page 12, that doesn't look like a back entrance to me. It looks like another front entrance. It's a handsome entrance. It's in the back of the building. Okay, I get that, but it looks like another front entrance. It's just as handsome as the front entrance. So I don't think I really agree that there's some it makes somebody lesser to come in that door.
No, I think as far as the design is concerned, I think that, it's fairly good. I mean, in terms of the way, the architect has, the elevation of it, the front, the facade of it. But I just feel the location inherently is awkward. Look, I bike here for the ABR days, and I use this entrance all the time. It is hidden. If this was sort of, on the other side where the police department has cars sort of back up and all near to the other side of the building, I mean, when you come in and you can work with the urban plaza, work with the parking, landscape, all kind of hardscape, landscape, all kind of stuff. I think this could be defensible. I just feel that right now, the elevation is good, but the location is bad. I don't think you will see it. I frankly, when you drive in, you literally will have to go in the front. Yeah, I mean, it's quite hidden. And I don't think it looks like that, frankly. I think it's much more hidden than it is. So,
Well,
When you're in,
my only
when you're over by the, let me just make this point. When you're in the service department, that side of the parking lot, you can't see this at all. This is just gone. You don't know this exists.
Well, we
That's
should,
not-
we,
But it's labeled as the building
either
department.
way, no matter, whether we went with this decision or the other decision, my previous point that this needs to be a real and a significant access point for a percentage of people. Therefore, we should have signage. There should be signage now. It should be better signage. You can't expect people who have mobility struggles to walk from that parking lot all the way across the front of the building. You can't expect for them to be dropped off. And
if you have to take somebody in a wheelchair, then you have to get the wheelchair back or something like that.
or if
I
they
just want to make, I just want to make the point. That's not a lesser entrance. You're making it out to be a lesser entrance and that somebody's a second-class citizen for going in that entrance. That's not, I don't see it that way at all.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
You know, I think the solution may be, I don't know who mentioned it, but in having a front turnaround or driveway or something, and with maybe 2 or 3 handicap parking spaces
Mhm.
right there
And
and a
then
wider
we're parking
space.
right at the first door.
Now we've got a nice dignified, they don't feel like they have to go, like, you know, your second-class citizens going around the back of the building. I think they should be able to come in.
So my first question, and I also was happy to not see the glass. I was really,
That's good too.
I wasn't excited about that, but I still struggle as you have with changing the facade because I think that the facade has a lot of character kind of in this part of Northeast Ohio. It's very representative, and I really struggle with this. If we were to go forward, what suggestions do you think that the ABR would make? Because I really think the aesthetic and the presence of this building, coupled with the fact that I'm still not convinced that we need all this space. I've always thought that we needed a refresh and maybe a space designer to come in or a modest, to be honest. And I'm just, because you haven't been here, I'm not trying to repeat what I've said. A modest addition or a space designer, because I think some space is poorly used. Some of the office space, I think, if you walked through here, you have that huge desk, for example, is a throwback to, I don't know, the 60s or the 70s. And I know people don't work the same way as they used to. I mean, my kids, certainly their workspaces, all of them, in their 20s, are very different than even what we would be contemplating here. And that's possibly a conversation to come later. But I still struggle with making sure that the appearance of this building that is used, but if you come here during the day, it's not, for better or worse, a bustling place. It's kind of a quiet, sleepy place. What could we do, or how could we address it? And do you think we need this space? That's the other thing. Or do you think that a more modest plan would be a way to address our needs? I'm just curious because you're here. Lucky you.
Delved into it as much as you have.
Yeah, well, we haven't.
You know the
Yeah.
administration much better, the administration itself and what it needs. But, we're not done with Paul Deutsch. We're still gonna hold his feet to the fire.
I appreciate that. I always appreciate that.
We want to preserve the Georgian architecture here. There's some lovely things on this building. There's some pretty bad things on this building. It's been, pardon my language, bastardized over the years. And that happens with every building, in every city hall, and every municipality. So if we could rectify some of that, if we could continue the same concept that inspired the initial central part of this building, I think we've got a winner. And I think it's possible. I don't have all the solutions, but this is what we do on here.
I know, that's why when I realized that it was the two of you here, I got a little bit.
Look, Paul's firm does that. There's such elegant solutions. There's a firm called Robert A. M. Stern. Robert A. M. Stern does all kind of, he goes on campuses and does all kind of buildings, renovations, insertions, updates, all kind of stuff. And Paul's firm does that as well. Look, it's a very nice building. It has but look, it's not on historic National Register of Historic, whatever that is these days. And communities evolve, people evolve, buildings evolve. You have to do it in a very thoughtful way. But you cannot, you as you already mentioned, users evolve. These days in terms of space requirements for all kind of things. So the time goes on, and I think it's perfectly fine to revisit some of the buildings and update them and bring them up to code, and then also renovate them and all. But I think going back to your point is that perhaps if there could be an agreement to move forward and have a deeper dive into design. When things come in front of Architecture Board of Review, we look at the design, the exterior of it. We normally do not look, we never look at inside. Unless there are things,
It's not in the public interest.
it's not in the public interest. But I think that considering perhaps there could be a group of us which working with you can look at the program of it as well. Do we need these many big spaces, or are we utilizing all the stuff which is already here? Things
Yeah.
like that. For a deeper engagement into it, I think he has the right kit of parts within it, but maybe we can look at the scale of it and maybe sort of, works deeper dive into that. But I really don't feel that it is worth spending $500,000 and again giving separate entrances for people who don't have different mobility needs and all that. And you are right. I mean, I think that we need to look at parking, drop off in the front. Look, when you're talking about wheelchairs, you also have to look at the pavement and the flooring, and you cannot bring wheelchair or anything.
That's why I'm
Anyway.
suggesting the
Yeah.
back might
Even-
still be better, and I know.
We trip when we come in here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like wire all over and the levels and all. It cannot be like this. I think it has
Scheme
to-
one did contemplate replacing that sidewalk with a
Which is
concrete
which is attractive, that's another, it's another, I understand, functionality
Chris, go back to
versus aesthetic.
the first one. Let's see what you did.
It's just a concrete sidewalk. It's like,
Also, it could be decorative concrete, could be paved, it could
Yeah.
be pavers, but these sandstone pavers, the size of them, they heave and they
I
get
know.
slippery when mossed.
I know,
So-
they're prettier.
So it's just,
They're more attractive.
they're beautiful.
They're more
no
historic
question.
looking. I understand those look like something in a mall.
We've had people,
incorporate them somewhere in
we've had people.
In that perimeter maybe or something, because that reminds me a little bit of a mall type of,
Yeah.
It's all your fault.
Don't throw anything away.
yeah.
Again, I think it's challenging to have conversations when this is our first look at a new plan. Like it would have been nice to maybe have had a sneak peek prior to the meeting, for us to come loaded with appropriate questions and have time to digest what's there, or as you suggested, that collaborative effort, which I don't feel that we've been really part of that in there. Yeah, we've listened. You've heard us in regards to the glass, but I'm still having a challenge with the front of the building. I wish I would have had some more time to really look at it and be able to come prepared to have a conversation with
Well,
you.
we're not
Like
making any
that's-
decisions tonight. This was simply to be a
Well, and-
presentation.
And Jim,
We'll come
and
back again.
thank you for
and we'll
interrupting
deal
me,
with
Rick.
this again.
We are also missing two key members who I know especially Scott. This is something that has been he has talked about, he has mentioned, he would like to be involved in the conversation. Unfortunately, he is not here, as is Jim. So I think that maybe we
Yeah,
table this.
I think maybe we've gone as far as we can tonight. And with council's assent, we will thank you for this presentation tonight. I really appreciate you gentlemen having taken time out of your days to be here tonight. And we will revisit this, and, I think it's nice to get it when we got it, but, it's always good earlier, but you also were able to present your comments to it and put it into context. So I understand why you didn't bring it forward before. But let's end our conversation for this evening, if everyone's okay, if we're where we are. And we'll revisit this when we have a full assemblage of Scott and Jim being able to join us also. And we'll get together and continue this conversation.
And just one comment on information and communication on this, that would be great. And that's part of the reason I think we're firing questions at you in real time, because we don't even have them written down. We didn't prepare. Maybe, I know I've suggested this before, we could have whatever document presented, like just as a informational, like almost like a first reading, and then just sit on it. It's just there. We don't even talk about it unless anybody has any questions or things they need. And then whatever the next meeting, we meet 2 weeks in a row if we do it the right way. The next meeting, we have the conversation. So that way we make sure we have what we need, and we have a whole week to sort out any problems, and then we show up and then we talk. That way we're not firing questions at you, trying to jot things down so we don't forget, that kind of thing. I know that's not your scheduling, but I just think that would be a way to do it.
Okay. Joan, okay, and you're always invited to come back and partake in these
Come back.
conversations.
We are, but they have to submit a week before.
That's right. All righty, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on now. I'll give you a chance to wrap that up. And we're going to move on now to NOPEC. I want to welcome this evening Tony Ramos. Tony is the relationship manager of NOPEC for Pepper Pike. And as council will remember, we brought on for a first reading a couple of ordinances that were being recommended by NOPEC. Thank you, gentlemen. We need Tony to really explain to us what we've circulated and everyone's seen the written material that you provided regarding it. But it might be helpful if you just sort of took us through this.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I appreciate the time this evening. So what you have before you, I like to say, we're making it more customer service oriented for your residents as they access the gas aggregation program. So as it stands currently now for the electric aggregation program, if a resident opts out and say 6 months later, they decide they want to rejoin the aggregation program, all they have to do is call us, and it takes 1 to 2 billing cycles for them to get pulled back into the electric aggregation. As it stands for gas right now, excuse me, I was at last night's Guardians game and I did a lot of screaming.
It was worth it.
I was there too.
So pardon my voice, but as it stands right now for the gas program, if you opt out of it, you can't come back into it until the next enrollment period. By statute, we enroll customers in the gas program every 2 years, and for the electric program, it's every 3 years. So someone who maybe opted out of the gas aggregation program this past June, they have to wait until next year if they want to come back. The ordinances that you have in front of you is going to allow the gas program to operate the same way as the electric program, allowing the resident a flexibility of coming and going as needed. So it's really just a procedural thing. You're not charging anybody any money. You're not changing the opt-out format of the program. I know it says opt-in, but we use the term opt-in so that they can come back in if they have opted out. So you're not changing how the program works initially when people get enrolled. What I've given you is a copy of the actual changes, which you already have it in the form of an ordinance, so it's made through legal review. And then also an FAQ that kind of answers those basic questions about why we're making this change. Ultimately, this change is happening because the way the state wrote gas aggregation is different than the way they wrote electric aggregation. Electric aggregation came second, and so it was written better than gas. So a lot of your neighboring communities are going through this process. It's really just a procedural process. You're just going to make it easier for customers. I am required to conduct 2 public hearings. NOPEC is required by statute to do that. Those 2 public hearings are scheduled for October 17th. They'll happen here, one at 12, from 12 to 1, the second from 5 to 6. No one from the city is required to be present unless you want to come hang out with me. No one ever comes to these public hearings because I'm not asking for any money and I'm not increasing any rates. So most of the time I just hang out and talk to city staff while I'm here. I'll come back after those hearings and let you know, hey, nobody came, or half the town came in and said they don't want this, so don't do it, kind of thing. And then you can pass it at a council meeting after those hearings. So I'll kind of pause there and answer any questions you may have.
I just have one question. It sounds like this gives the users of the utilities more freedom and more ability to select the provider that they want. Would that be fair characterization?
Absolutely. This is a increased customer service type of changes. So both the legislation updates the plan of operation and governance. We file that at the PUCO, and it just makes it a much easier experience for customers accessing the aggregation program.
So they'll be able to move in and out easier.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, much like they can with the electric program, yes.
And I'm assuming you'll be sending out all kinds of information about this to the community, people, potential.
No, there won't be any kind of mass communication about it. Ultimately, so the next gas enrollment period is next June. So if you're a resident of the city, and let's say once we make this change and you go, oh, the aggregation program, you'll get what's called a refresh letter. So if you opted out, once we make this change, and if you're not in a contract with another supplier, you'll now appear on what we call our refresh list. So you as an individual resident, once you become eligible again, I'll send you a letter in the mail, but we're not gonna send anything broadly.
But they'll know that they are truly eligible, that the
Correct.
system has changed. If they were aware that they were only getting it previously every 2 years, they'll
They'll
know
go,
they're
oh,
eligible.
I suddenly got a letter from NOPEC. I haven't seen one of those in 2 years. Oh, I'm eligible to get pulled back. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
There's no downside to any customer for this. This is only upside in terms
No,
of
this is-
flexibility.
Yeah, there's no
Right.
downside, like, we're not changing rates, we're not changing how the program operates. It's just giving you the flexibility that if you opted out of the gas program and you said, I made a terrible error, NOPEC's rate is better than anything else I can find, but I can't get back in until every 2 years. This allows them to come back in 1 to 2 billion cycles,
Like the electric, basically.
like the electric program is currently.
Is this was there a statutory change or a PUCO reg change that permitted this? Why is this happening?
No, to be honest, NOPEC should have come back to all of our communities years ago and asked for this. It's just the way the original law was written. Some communities have done it years ago. So every time we meet with our communities and we say, these are all of the programs that NOPEC offers. Oh, by the way, you can make this gas change. Believe it or not, some communities, it takes me like 6 times knocking on the door going, just make this change for me, please. So this year, for some reason, a bunch of communities have just said, hey, Tony, come do this for us so we can just get this done. It's timely because we're about to re-enter the winter heating season, but we should have done it a long time ago.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, Council?
Thank you.
If you think of something in the meantime, just reach out to me or come see me on October.
Yeah, I've shared your contact information with all of council.
Well, that's all I had.
Okay,
Thanks for your-
that's all you got? Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, so we will pass that on as having had second reading.
For both 34,
I'm sorry, what?
for both 34 and 35.
For both 34 and 35.
And so the
Yes.
third reading would be
After his
After the
public
hearing.
readings, his public notice.
So the second meeting in October, I guess, would,
Yeah, if you can get it done by then, yeah.
He said it was the 17th, the public hearing, so we could do it on the 23rd.
Yeah,
there's 2 public hearings, so.
It's the same day.
Oh, they're on the same.
which, and then people will have the ability to pick up some of the winter season if they want. That's good.
We should put that on an email or communication to the residents when.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. We'll alert
Right.
residents that they now have this option to get in. I think that's a good point. Where are we? Number 5. We're going to return to the discussion on the alternate path option extension for the Gates Mills Boulevard multipurpose trail. We started this discussion last week. Don, you were going to prepare some visuals. There were some questions last week about 8-foot paths, 10-foot paths. Everyone knows what a 5-foot path looks like. It's on land or road, if you haven't noticed it. So we gotta know what a 5-foot looks like. And Don is.
This is the no path option. So I did go out, we took pictures, I think Monday or Tuesday, of basically standing at the south driveway at Ursuline and looking north.
So we're looking north in this picture.
Looking north.
Okay.
You can see the utility poles there and the trees. Okay, next option. That is a path. That's scaled to reflect what a 10-foot path looks like. Big space there for it. It's pretty wide open. It would be at the same level of service, the same level of safety as the 10-foot path that's already coming up that side of Lander Road to the south entrance of Ursuline campus. This would be the path going north to the north entrance of Ursuline campus. And then this is 8 feet. So that's visually or what the difference is. That's back to 10.
That's half?
No, that's from 10 to 8.
Oh, to 8, I got it.
Yeah, I didn't do a 5 because we've now have about 3,000 feet of 5-foot walk already installed. So I think everybody kind of knows what the feel of the 5-foot is.
Well, 5 would probably, I mean, you could see it's 8. You could kind of extrapolate
Right.
and see.
And if we were to go with the matching the trail, the 5-foot, there is some space there to do a little bit of a gentle meander too. So
If we did the 5.
if we did the 5, yeah. I wouldn't want to meander something like this too much because it doesn't really serve a lot of purpose.
Sure, but if there's,
And it is a change. I mean, my preference, as I said before, is if you're going to match the same level of service as the trail from a safety standpoint, from a bicycle or a rider or somebody pushing a stroller or whatever, they could continue on at that same level of service, level of operating comfort for this next chunk in front of Ursuline. And there are no other driveways coming in and out. There's no other conflict areas. So it is a relatively easy piece to do. But
or you said alternatively, we could match how we have it on the rest of Lander.
you could match the
do the
walking
5-foot
path.
concrete. And so that would be matching that part.
That other section, right?
Is this going only to to the tennis courts?
This
Yeah.
goes to that northern driveway, correct?
Because there's a big tree there that's very close to the road at the far end.
Yeah.
In your photo.
Yeah, it's in terrible shape. It would come out.
Looks like
It would come out.
very close to the road. I was just
Yeah,
driving by.
it's not a healthy tree. It's not great.
Right next to that house, the brick
Yes.
house.
Yes. Yeah.
So for what it's worth, I reached out to everyone who had emailed us leading up to last week's meeting and said, hey, this council's in support of this. We got great feedback. Here are the two options. I kept it very neutral. And it was almost comical. The responses were all over the place. I even got some, maybe even like 10-foot concrete, stuff that wasn't even on the table. But more than a couple people said, well, I would defer to whatever is recommended. And that's where I'm coming from with this, is that I am not obviously an engineer of any sort. And I think that for ease of usability and safety, for the reasons that Don is stating, the 10-foot makes a lot of sense to me. Also taking into account that it's going to visually be consistent. So I think that the counter arguments that I heard last week were a lot about aesthetics, and that's obviously a consideration, but I think it's one consideration that we have to take out of several.
Ursuline College reached out to me and has requested that it be a 10-foot.
Well,
But it's not
I'm just saying.
They don't
That would be their vote.
They have nothing to say because their board's
No,
being
but that would be
replaced by
their
humans.
a property stakeholder, I guess, like Jason, and that was their thought.
well, and I think Tony, you go ahead. Sorry.
My question really is, I don't really know how we got here in the first place, because we had said that we were going to take the Lander sidewalk up to Fairmount. That was the last I knew. And this is sort of been sprung on me. This was back in December
There's
last
a
year.
sidewalk up to Fairmount.
To the Fairmount Circle, Fairmount to the Circle.
That is where it's going.
Okay, right. And that's what we were going to do. But now we seem to be extending down Lander to get to Ainsworth, or thinking about it. So my question is, and I haven't decided whether I'm for it or against it, but why wouldn't we just continue the 5-foot sidewalk on the same side of the road rather than putting this on on Ursuline's property. To me, that they're two separate things. We've got the Gates Mills Trail, which was extended to Ursuline. But we have the recreational trails, which are on the, east side of Lander. So there's inconsistency either way, and it seems to me to make more sense if we're gonna do something, to do the 5-foot recreational trail on the east side of Lander.
I also,
That's
I
just the way I feel. I don't.
I kind of share that sentiment. I think it's consistent with what we were doing on the other part of Lander. I also think probably aesthetically, because it's so close to the street. I mean, I did see a difference between the 8 and 10, but I think aesthetically it'd be more pleasing and also just as functional. I mean, I think we all probably had conversations and emails with a lot of people in Ainsworth who, very nicely and, kind of thoughtfully are advocating. I didn't really get a lot of feedback that there was any strong sentiment for one surface versus the other. It was more for accessibility to the other pathways. So I kind of share Tony's instinct.
And one more point, because of what you just brought up, they're talking about still having to cross Lander, the Ainsworth people.
And
who are
that's
the
just
main proponents of this. And if we went on the same side as the other recreational trail is, they wouldn't have to cross Lander to be able to walk on this.
Can I?
Until they got to the circle.
Yeah, just to bring a little bit of.
Yeah.
Right, until they got
That's
to the
true.
circle.
Right, when we did the determination on which side of the street to put the sidewalk, we did it in sections. And actually the section from Fairmount to Cedar, the determination was it would need to go on the west side because you're not crossing all of the drive aprons and it's actually a safer spot to put the trail, regardless of the width of it. That was the calculation that we did to determine that the east side was the appropriate side from Fairmount all the way to Chagrin.
So each leg from the Chagrin Circle turned out to be on the
east side, right? And then from Fairmount, Fairmount North, the west side made the most sense because because of the picture here, you got this huge chunk where you're not replacing any driveway.
I can see that.
Right.
We never talked about that though.
Well, when I did the presentation, I showed that was part of it. Even though we said when we were going to prepare the plans, we were going to stop at Fairmount for the path, which we did. When we did the trail, the Gates Mills Boulevard multipurpose trail and the grant, the first 800 feet of it goes on Lander Road. So we have that chunk that's already under contract and that piece is going to be built. So at that time, I was asked to give just, hey, what would it cost to have alternates so that should council want to do it one way or the other? There's an option. There's the no build option, I guess. There's, do you want to do a 10-foot path? And also what would the 5-foot path? We got pricing for those things. So we'd have options.
So my question, Don, is so I'm all in favor of the extension for sure. And I don't mind the 10-foot being in the middle of the Gates Mills median because it's a huge median. It's a long way from houses and whatnot. But are we either under the terms of the grant, are we obliged, I'll call it the spur up Lander.
Yeah.
Are we obliged to do 10-foot asphalt there?
No.
No.
Well, no, we're obliged to do 10-foot asphalt to the Ursuline south entrance. Yes, if that's the question.
First drive.
To the first drive.
To the first drive. So
right.
We're
Beyond
obliged,
that, this is 100% city project.
and we're obliged to make that part 10-foot
Correct.
because that's what we submitted for the grant.
That's correct.
So
And
it'll
it's really also the minimum design that you'd want to use for a multi-purpose trail where you're anticipating bicycle riders and stroller
Okay.
riders. And
Well,
all sorts.
So when I drove here tonight.
Can I just finish?
Yes, sorry, Jim.
So we're obliged because we're taking the money.
Mhm.
And we gave them this plan. And so that's kind of done.
Right.
And we don't have the capability to non-perform that spur if we wish to.
No, I don't think you can non-perform it. If you're gonna do this, you're going to do it as you present. Part of the reason that you present the grant a certain way is part of the reason you get awarded to the grant.
Right.
So if you were to decide not to do the last 800 feet, there's a very good chance they would say, we're no longer participating in this trail project because you
Okay.
didn't connect it to this giant college campus, which was part of your application.
Well, it could connect to that corner and then a regular sidewalk could go up to connect it, but you're.
Right, but
you're
that's
saying-
not how we presented it. And
Okay,
that's part of the
so-
reason
so-
their decision-making process included placing a value on providing that destination and that link.
Okay, so I'm going to take that as.
I wouldn't risk it.
Too much risk.
Yes.
We're not going to do that. So the first part of the spur is locked in at 10-foot asphalt. And we just got to do that. Okay. So with that as a baseline, just let me comment. Kathy, you may have raised this, but I didn't appreciate that the spur was going to be,
I raised it.
you probably did,
I
right?
did.
And I probably melded your thoughts into your comments about the 10-foot on the rest of the thing. At least that's where my brain went because that's been an issue for you from day one, and I get that. So I didn't appreciate that. I appreciate there was going to be a spur. I didn't appreciate the spur was going to be the same 10-foot wide asphalt. For me, it's the aesthetics get to me, and we're putting 5-foot concrete everywhere else, and I would much prefer, particularly this close to the road, and it's a long trail to limit it to the 5 feet concrete. I just think there's a very limited amount of traffic going to come this way. I don't think people using the trail are going to go up there then come back. So it's a limited amount of traffic from the Ainsworth people, and I think we're building 5-foot sidewalks everywhere else in the city on all these roads, and so I just think that's the way to go for this.
So my question is
I have
with
one-
non-perform, because I would like to speak.
Go ahead.
With non-performance, could we change the material? Could we make that spur into a 5-foot sidewalk to match everything else? When I was driving here this evening, I head up Gates Mills and come around Shaker Circle to arrive at City Hall. All of the connections around that circle and the offshoots are all 5-foot concrete. So I really, the argument of the size is kind of lost on me because we are getting people to the path on a 5-foot sidewalk here. So for the aesthetics around Lander Circle, is there, or Fairmont Circle, I'm sorry, is there the possibility of just that spur that crosses Fairmont and wraps over, doing the entire thing, running it up to Ainsworth and that north driveway, all 5-foot concrete? I think it would match the rest of the city. I don't think that the rest of us realized that spur was going to be 10 feet wide. I think it's going to look out of place with wrapping around there. Is there any possibility for consideration, not non-performance, but what do we call this? A change order in the project, if that's a possibility? I just think it's going to look so much nicer and still provide those walkable areas that we have intended the community to have. So
And you're saying on the east side of the ladder?
I'm saying we're done laid it out is fine with
On the
me.
west.
I get the non-crossing driveways. I think that will be a cost savings, and that if we have the space there, it makes sense to do it. I'm not opposed to that side of the street.
Yeah, and I
I
tend to
have to do
agree.
one question though for Don. This seems to be a detail, the extension being a 10-foot. You couldn't approach the grant agency.
No.
Let me ask
Okay,
finish the
sorry, go
question
ahead.
before you say no. Okay?
Go ahead.
And say that there's strong sentiment to still put walkability in,
Yeah.
but to do it at a 5-foot concrete to match the rest of the city.
I'll try to say this nicely. It's a bait and switch. We applied and said we wanted a 10-foot trail to get to the Ursuline campus, to connect that campus and our core city hall and the rest of the community together with a multi-purpose trail. A 5-foot walk is not a multi-purpose trail, and it does not qualify for the grant. So it would not qualify for the grant. And my concern would be to say, well, we're just not, we'll take that off. We'll not charge you. We'll give some of the money back. You'd lose all the grants. I really think you would.
I resent the characterization as bait and switch.
Well,
When you-
I'm just saying from the
let me-
receiver,
again,
from the
let me
receiver
finish.
side,
Again,
if I'm the
That was a
person.
nice way of saying it.
If I'm the person
Again,
accepting.
let me finish my comment, please, before you
All right.
jump down my throat again. To have a bait and switch, you have to have the alternative in mind when you ask for the first thing.
Correct.
We didn't. So it's not a bait and switch by any stretch of the imagination. And to say that is really insulting to be.
Well,
I don't think
my
that
goal
we
was not
realized
to
what
insult
that was.
anybody, but if I'm the reviewer from the other side of it, they do not necessarily know, they don't know all of the details that went into us applying for it. And they wouldn't know necessarily whether or not we discussed different path dimensions. And kind of to the contrary, we did talk a lot about path width the entire time we were talking about submitting this application. Many, many conversations were, do we have to go with 10? Could it be 8? Can it be 6? And my point had always been, if you want to get the grant money, it has to be 10.
Well,
And it's also, that is the multi-purpose trail function. It has to be that wide.
well, so here's the point that I think is sort of getting lost, and I think a lot of my colleagues on council are actually making, is that we accepted, although some of us would have preferred an 8-foot trail, which would have complied with the grant, but reduced our chances of getting it, and we accepted the 10 for the Gates Mills path, which was a wide stretch of grass and important to, I think, all or most of us on council to have it landscaped and designed. So we saw it as one kind of project. The other project we saw as a 5-foot sidewalk, also having a positive function for walkability, but different. So I don't think people were saying, I think people are saying we understood the width of the path for the whole of the Gates Mills Trail. We would have liked to have excluded the connection to Ursuline, which was not part of the original concern of when we were getting the grant. It wasn't even part of one of our original grant applications. We would have preferred to exclude that. And I know I would have preferred to have had ample discussion. I wasn't even aware, and I don't mind that alternatives were included to get to Ainsworth. I am, as you could tell, probably in favor of a 5-foot path toward Ainsworth. I just would have liked to have had a full discussion, because if so, I think we would have still said we want the grant for the Gates Mills Trail. We would have not included the connector to Ursuline as part of the path. We would have had a 5-foot sidewalk, perhaps many of us, at least I would have, and then continued, because it's going to look inconsistent. Yet it's going to look like we have part of the Gates Mills Trail path and then part of the Lander Road path, which this is Lander Road. The Lander, so the Lander Road Trail going, so the inconsistency is it's always going to be inconsistent at this point. And we really didn't have that conversation. I don't even know how the alternatives, who said we should put an alternative in the bidding, and why didn't we know? Who said that? Who asked for that?
When we were preparing bid documents, we were approached by residents of Ainsworth who were already saying, a few of them, why is this not coming up to our street? The easiest thing to do was to say, you know what, just build in some alternatives. Council can determine later if it wants to do it, doesn't want to do it, but that way there'll be the alternatives for council to be able to be informed and make a decision. No one on this council needs to approve an extension from.
That's not my point, Rick.
No,
but you're
let me finish,
interrupting
let me
what- you're
finish my
mischaracterizing what I said.
response to you.
Mischaracterizing.
There was no, it was a natural evolution of the description of, we had an approved multi-purpose path proposal. That had to be the bid documents prepared. There were approaches from residents who said, can you extend this farther? No, that's not part of the grant, at least. But in preparing the bid, let's be informed for our city council and for the administration as to what would that involve? How much would that cost? So I commend Don for having gotten bids for both a 5-foot concrete path, which it seems to me is what most of you prefer, and an extension of the 10-foot multi-purpose path. That's good work on behalf of Mr. Shi to have gone and made available that information so council can be considering it tonight and last week. Like Don said, there are three choices here, basically. You can do no extension, you don't have to. You can do a 10-foot asphalt, you can do a 5-foot concrete. Any one of those. I guess you can do an 8-foot asphalt since you drew it out too. But it seems to me that my sense is that council prefers, if you're going to do an extension, to do an 8-foot, or a 5-foot concrete. I don't think we ought to be relitigating a decision that was made a year ago on the multi-purpose trail. That doesn't seem to be a very productive conversation.
I need to finish what
I have a comment though, Rick. I said that I preferred the 5-foot concrete trail. What I really prefer is consistency. And if we're committed to doing something north of the circle on Lander, I would say that I would prefer the 10-foot asphalt because that's consistent going there, and there's a natural gap between the 5-foot and the 10-foot. And if we can't have it on, I'm sorry, that's the, if we can't have it on the same side of the road, we're not getting the consistency that I would have preferred anyway.
Okay.
So.
And my point, let me just, is not a criticism of getting the bids. That was maybe your misunderstanding. My point was that council should have been informed of the entirety of what was going on so that we could get some consistency. And also, it's just another communication piece. It's just another last minute, something we weren't told. We should have been told that. We would have been able to work through this so that it was one consistent piece. And I know Kathy mentioned it, but it wasn't clear to us. And with all due respect to Kathy, it wasn't her job to try and explain it in the midst of this big conversation. That's something that if it would have been elevated to a point, it would have been really easy and simple to fix it. And now we're in this kind of messy situation where,
I respectfully disagree. This alternative did not exist a year ago. There was no alternative. This was, when we were discussing the multi-purpose path, it was described and planned going up to the southern entrance of that, or the south driveway. That was it. There was no other thing to have a conversation about. It was only afterwards that this came up through some resident inquiries, as I've mentioned already, and Don, proactively got us some other bids for it. That's healthy. Now, I think the thing that we have to focus on tonight is, does council, one, want to do an extension from the southern to the northern driveway? And two, how do you prefer to see it accomplished? You want to see it accomplished in a 10-foot asphalt path or a 5-foot concrete walk? And I think we can have that effective discussion. It sounds to me like, Tony, I don't want to mischaracterize what you said. It sounds like you're.
Can we get some clarification from Don real quick?
I'm for aesthetic consistency. And since we can't have perfect aesthetic consistency with the 5-foot sidewalk or 5-foot recreational trail all on the same side of the street, and we are committed to the 10-foot multi-purpose trail, I would prefer to see the extension to the northern driveway in the 10-foot asphalt so that it matches what we are already committed to.
Okay.
So coming up Lander is 5-foot concrete, and then it goes around, is it the southwestern quadrant of the circle?
Yes.
And where does the concrete stop at? Or is it just the first section to Gates Mills that's concrete?
Well, what happens is, as you go around the circle if you're going to cross the street at Lander.
Okay.
And you're going to work to the west.
Yep.
And then you are going to cross onto Gates Mills Trail.
Okay.
Which will be 10 feet wide.
Okay. So
that will be 10 feet wide all the way around the circle up to Lander again, and then head north.
Okay, thank you.
Don't forget, the southern area is all concrete that we're going to see.
Like Councilmember putting up your hand. Not everyone puts up a hand. You don't always have to put up your hand. Jump in if you want, but I recognize you. What would you like?
So when I first heard of the extension being 10 feet, I actually did email the grant people, Dwan Hammonds, which you know, Mayor, because you told me that that wasn't a good idea because it makes us look like we're, not agreeing. But I just wanted to get information to see if that little spur could be anything else than the 10 feet. And from what I gathered from that, that's no, because when Don proposed it, he said 10 feet. So, my issue is that we're building a trail for the grant and the aesthetics of the grant for $500,000. But we're doing that. And for the extension, I also emailed some people that emailed us. I had 12 responses. Most of them were on Ainsworth. 3 wanted 5 feet concrete, or 3 wanted 5 feet. 1 person wanted 8 feet, but didn't really care. 2 people were like 8 to 10. 4 people didn't care as long as they had access. And then as far as concrete, 3 wanted concrete, 1 wanted asphalt, and 8 had no preference. They just want access. So we're kind of splitting hairs what it's going to be made out of. My thing is if we ever extend it to Cedar, which we've gotten emails about why is Cedar being excluded, the whole path to Cedar, that probably would be concrete because it's going to be crossing driveways. So then do we want consistency from Ursuline all the way, or do we want a break? Then it'll be asphalt and concrete on the same side of the road, which
Twice.
also looks
That's a really
strange.
good point. These are the
So-
conversations I would love to think
But,
through ahead.
it's like we have to think about the future too. Like, how much do we want to plan for?
Yeah.
And consistency in that.
So I drive 91 up north, and when you cross into Mayfield Village, they have a asphalt walkway there. It does not look as nice as a concrete sidewalk. It fades. It looks messy.
Well, I think that's why most communities do concrete.
And so I want us to not just look at what it's going to look like, maybe initially poured or paved, that it'll look nice, but let's look out 10 years, let's look out 15 years. What is that really going to look like, both for the residents who live on Lander and are going to be looking at it, and for those who are going to be driving past it and using it. And I believe the concrete is a little nicer material. It looks more aesthetic. So I think if we're doing, I'm in favor of the 5-foot walkway there out of concrete between those driveways.
I think you make a really good point about that. I also drive that way toward North Street and Reservation,
Right.
and it has started to look shabby.
It does.
And I don't know that it's even
Sorry to
been
hear that.
there that many years. No offense to them.
Yeah.
Also, the
But
side-
and also, I just wanted one other point. We might be being penny wise, pound foolish, because the durability of the concrete and the projected, life of it is longer. And so that's just another point.
To me, it's an aesthetic issue, just.
Yeah, no,
much
it is
prefer. So
aesthetic. I'm just saying.
Could I try and
Cost.
just bring this to a head?
Yeah,
I make
sure.
a motion to accept the bid for a 5-foot concrete path between the south driveway and Ainsworth.
Jim,
Kathy has one.
I have a comment on that. If you
Okay.
look at the original bids from the contractors, they're all over the place for a 5-foot wide concrete. And our person that we're contracted with was like 20,000, 30,000. I have to bring up the sheet, but it was a lot more than the other bids. So I think if we were going to do it, maybe we could just kind of get rebids.
Well, let's
because-
stop it. Don, what, can you explain that? I didn't realize there was a spread for concrete.
Yeah, I think the numbers were, both numbers were under 200,000 for the 10-foot asphalt path or the 5-foot concrete walk. But if you pick out that particular item in the alternates, some of the other contractors had different prices. And part of it depends on, I don't like to say, well, this part of this one bid is good and this part isn't or whatever, because different contractors, depending on who's the prime, who's the subcontractor, sometimes they push money in and out of different items based on like the guy that's doing the work out here, Northeast Ohio trenching, is primarily an excavator. He has an asphalt contractor who's going to pave the whole path. That's his normal type of work. So he probably is a little bit more competitive on the asphalt install, which is how he got the project. Now, doing the concrete work, he might be a little bit more pricey. I would say that if the direction is that you want to go with the concrete, if you gave me some latitude to talk to the contractor who's actually doing our current concrete sidewalk,
That was my question.
there might be, and I don't like to have these conversations.
Got it.
I want to be able to explore what a change order for that contractor would look like as opposed to adding
guy.
the addendum for this one. But
Got it.
if I have the latitude of doing that, then I'm going to get the best price for the city.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, Don, because if you look at these alternates on the Gates Mills, we had 2 alternates, the 10-foot asphalt and the 5-foot concrete. And our contractor is like $60,000 almost more than another contractor. I'm just curious, if we were doing the Lander one anyway and we're getting quotes on extensions, why didn't we initially get one quote as an alternate for the Lander contractors too?
She means
The Lander sidewalk project. Yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
combined bid for both.
Right.
So both asphalt and concrete, and they were the lowest collectively.
No. I know
No,
that.
she just means.
I'm
for
just
the
saying, why didn't we
extension.
get an alternate too from the Lander people on the same part that we got an alternate for the Gates Mills project? Because it is part
It
of
doesn't-
Lander.
It doesn't touch, this is an extension of the Gates Mills Boulevard path, which goes up to the Ursuline College entrance. And so that's the extension. The sidewalk project did stop at Fairmount, or the trail project stopped at Fairmount. The limits of that bid package. And, I guess we could have, but we didn't have that ready when we bid out the trail.
The
Well,
approach
that's just
should be
just
that Don
labeling.
is
But anyway, he's going to talk to
authorized
them
to
now.
engage in the change orders.
What's the spread between those contractors? Is it the concrete guys for the extension? Is it dollar wise? Do you remember?
It would be significant. It'd be
Okay.
worth, it's not $5,000
Okay.
difference. It's-
So do we want to authorize Don to do that and have him come back to us? Do we have time for this?
I would say that and I don't know how you do this in a motion, if we could get permission to negotiate a change order,
Mhm.
and the not to exceed fee would be the change order for the alternate, but if I
Yeah.
can get it for a better price, I'd have that leeway to know that when I come back to council
Okay.
with the change order, it'll get approved by
Yeah.
council.
Yeah.
When they actually.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that-
Is that your motion, Jim?
I'm looking at.
Well,
How do you say that?
I mean, the solicitation of a change order is an administrative activity. If council wants to express its support that aspect be pursued, you make a motion and say, go ahead and, pursue a change order. Whatever he discovers, he has to bring back to you for approval.
What we should do is probably approve the concrete alternate up to the amount.
The lower amount.
The higher amount.
No,
The higher
Up to the amount
current
under this
contractor.
contract.
Up to the amount of-
You can't get another contractor that-
No, I'm not asking to, just up to the
We have a
amount.
special meeting.
What's, just so we have.
You'll have to vote.
The alternate for the concrete,
Okay.
I think, was like 198,000 or something.
Okay, so up to that.
Up to that
If you do
amount.
that, go do
And
it.
then if there's a way to do that at a lesser cost and still have the same quality or same matching, then
Got
we
it.
would do that.
Can you, I'm good with that. Are you guys good with it to the extent
If
you're
you-
supportive of this?
I didn't hear it. It was-
201.
He's going to negotiate
860.
up to the level of the other concrete guy.
Okay.
And if he can get a changer that matches that, am I saying this right?
It'll be low. If it's not lower, should be lower.
Or that, then he can go ahead. We're approving that tonight, if he can do that. Do that, Steve?
Well,
He
the,
still has to come back.
That's
with
what
a
we're
number.
I would say that you wait until he's got
The
a
number.
firm number to come back and make an actual motion to authorize a change order in the amount of X to perform.
We're gonna have to have a
Why
second.
not just approve up to the amount,
Yeah.
not to exceed the
So
amount?
I'm just worried
And
about
then Don
time.
is free to,
Well, they still have.
negotiate the lower price. All we need is a motion to approve not to exceed this amount.
A change order to.
No, we're not talking about a change order.
That's what Don said.
Yeah,
That's
it- well,
Yeah,
it
it
could
has to
be,
be a
it
change
could
order.
be awarding the alternate.
Yeah.
To the contractor who's doing Gates Mills, or getting a change order for additional quantity for the contractor who's doing Lander.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it's either awarding the alternate in the amount not to exceed a number, or,
Again,
yeah, I know what you're saying.
I think you need to come back with a contractor who's going to do the work
Right.
for a fixed price.
And we could
I mean,
have a
that makes
special
sense,
meeting.
But what's the big deal? We'll either have a special meeting, they have to get all the way up there anyway, and this
Yeah.
is one little piece.
Here's, and again, don't like to talk too much about contractors
Uh-huh.
at a public meeting, but from a timing standpoint, they would need to know that we're committed to doing this pretty quickly, because we want to get it done before the end of the season.
Sure,
That's
sure.
my concern, yeah.
Well, we can- we
I don't
can
want to
put
run out of
together a
time.
special
Mr. Gentili, since you're now the person politely raising their hand, yes, sir?
There is one issue that I want to bring up. I don't know if it really is an issue or not, but it's a potential issue. But we have a special color for our recreational trails.
Yes,
And if
they both have the same spec. Your point is well taken. They both are using the same specification for the material, the seal coat. That's how we bid the alternate. And the one benefit of using our current sidewalk contractor would be that you're guaranteed that the look would be.
Exactly.
really
that's
identical.
what that was my point. The guy that's doing Gates Mills might be slightly different.
It's possible.
So.
But they're pretty far away.
So,
I've never
yeah,
seen two.
But, so,
800 feet.
John, I'm sorry about timing. So do we need to have a special meeting once you do this to get this done? Or-
Why don't I have the conversation,
Okay.
and if they want some type of a commitment that they're gonna get awarded that change, and there's some timing, then I can bring that back. I could say, yes, we need a special meeting to approve a change order, or
Okay.
they'll take it on faith.
Okay.
All right, if we need a special meeting, that's what we'll do.
I think that's a good solution.
Do we need to vote on this? or-
No, the administration can solicit
Okay.
additional cost
Nice.
information.
But the community knows we're in support.
So as soon as you know if we need a special meeting, can we get it on the calendar?
Yes.
It'll be a
To make
short,
sure
it'll
we
be
have
a
a
real quick
quorum.
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to make sure everyone can attend.
We hope to get that next week.
Quorum for that event.
Yeah, we will be looking, so the council knows, we will be looking to do this special meeting if that's what we need next week.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, just the calendar,
All
not Thursday, please.
Oh, is there?
right, so we're gonna move on.
Oh, the holiday.
Committees, we had a finance committee meeting tonight.
I'll refer to my two colleagues to carry the ball.
Jeremy,
since I
want
was-
to-
Yeah. So, finance committee meeting tonight, things checked out okay. Nothing really to report. Joe did mention, we talked about it, he's going to be getting back to us with some dates for the budget meeting. Now that we're approaching the end of the third quarter, that the annual budget meeting, that we will get that on the schedule. So, that's exciting news for all of us. And that was pretty much it.
All right,
Okay.
I asked a little bit more about I feel like this issue had come up over the past couple months, the cash balance, and just confirm that kind of having $1 million sitting in cash is what Joe's comfortable with to cover any outstanding liabilities we might have without,
Working capital,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd like to just raise one other point on that. The city finished our annual audit with the state of Ohio. You all should have gotten that report from that. So I went over that with some detail with Joe. There was one item that was not properly recorded. It was not recording the asset for some bonds. The liability was recorded. That was simply a mistake that passed through 3 levels of review and finally got caught at the second level at the state auditor. After my conversation with Joe, I called the state auditor, and I've done this before, just to talk through the audit, how it went, process and procedures, internal controls. I wanted to get their comfort level with how the city finances were, both kind of the hard things and the soft things. Marston's his name?
Martin.
Yeah, Marston. Very great, very good conversation. He explained that one mistake, was very comfortable that it was just a one-time human error. It wasn't anything systemic that we need to worry about. He was very complimentary of Joe's cooperation, he and Becky in particular. And
To me.
I'm sorry, not me, and I'm sorry, and she. I'm sorry. He is very complimentary of the staff in two respects. One is in terms of providing information. Anytime they had a question, it was quick to provide that information. And also in terms of both this audit and prior audits, where they would have not a flaw, but a suggestion for improvement, which is typical in these kind of review letters, that Joe and his team were very ready to implement that and did implement on a year-over-year basis. And so those suggestions now get narrower and narrower and narrower and smaller, more theoretical.
But they'll come up with something.
They'll come up with something. And I talked to Marcin about that. He said, my last recommendation was kind of theoretical and probably not practical, but we need to suggest something. And so they had that on there. And so just wanted to pass all that along to the full council and to the public that I have a high degree of confidence in the integrity of our financial statements.
I have a couple questions and comments about finance since I wasn't able to attend the meetings, and I think appropriate to let council ask questions after the report. I'll address the audit first. I believe that in doing our due diligence as council members, that we should be able to have a meeting with the auditor each and every year. And that we shouldn't have one council member, with all due respect, Jim, being able to waive that. I think that anybody that wants to have a meeting with the auditor should be able to have one, any member of council. That's part of our due diligence. I'm still not clear on the $1.3 million error, because there's two double entry bookkeeping. So you can't record only not record the asset. You have to also not record something else. So what was the other side of what was not
The
recorded?
liability was recorded. The
Right.
receivable, because they were assessment bonds,
Yeah.
was not recorded as a receivable or an asset. So liability is there, asset was not there. And both our local government services and Joe and the first level of the state simply missed that failure to include the interest.
It was in the conversion of our books.
Well, that would say that the balance sheet was out of balance. That's impossible.
Well, Joe, you can explain.
It's not out of balance. They failed to book the long-term receivable, like Jim said, for special assessment asset for a receivable. The debt is booked.
What was the other side of that entry, though? If they didn't book the asset, what was the other side of that entry?
Just give me a call.
Um,
I mean, if
I
you
think-
had the concern, I mean, I'm not prepared to sit and go through it in detail
Well,
with you
if
right
you
now.
could just bring the answer to the next meeting, because I don't understand how you can only book one side of an entry in accounting. You have to book two sides. If there's an asset not recorded, something else has to not be recorded. Otherwise, you have an out of balance situation.
You would, but in this case, it's two separate entries. The one was booked properly for the liability side, and on the other side, the receivable was not booked. So those would have been two separate entries that they would be booking. So you're not out of balance, but the financial statements as presented to the other side of the state auditor, the audit side, actually had the bond fund looking worse than it is because it didn't have that long-term receivable book.
I'm a CPA, I've been an accountant for 50 years. I still don't understand the explanation. So if you could get a more thorough explanation and bring it to council next time, I would appreciate it. Because I still don't understand what happened. It sounds like only one side of an entry was made, and that's nearly impossible because then you have an out of balance situation. Okay. Now, I did have a question, and I do my comparisons to the prior year, and general government was $105,000 higher than 2023. Do we know why that was?
Yeah, we've talked about it in the past, because you haven't been to every meeting.
I only missed one.
The general liability insurance was a PO that got paid this year.
Okay. And the $106,000 payment to the city of Beechwood, that was the highest bill on the bill sheet?
dispatch.
Yeah. That's a lot. That's like
That's-
5
it was
months?
Several months.
5 months?
4 months, maybe.
4 months? Okay. Did-
They got
did-
a new staff and she wasn't sending out the bills.
I wasn't sending out the bills. Okay. And there was a $50,000 payment, which was described as a loan payment. Can you just refresh my memory? What loan was that?
The OPWC,
OPWC for which project?
Lander
Lander?
and Brainerd.
Okay, that answers my questions, except the first one.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Department heads, do you have any other comments? Okay. We'll skip to me. The few things to point out. Last Monday, we had our groundbreaking for the Gates Mills Boulevard Park and multipurpose path. It was very successful. I want to extend our appreciation to the many county officials and others who supported that project throughout the years and were able to attend and participate. Particularly, I want to call out our county executive, Chris Ronayne, Kyle Dreyfus-Wells, the CEO of the Regional Sewer District, Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. Obviously, Chris has supported the approximate $800,000 that the city will be receiving for the Gates Mills repaving project, which was fulfilling, initiatives that I'd engaged in back when Armin Budish was the executive. And I was just so pleased that Chris honored all that and actually improved upon it. The Regional Sewer District, of course, is responsible for, was a $3.5 million thereabouts stormwater project up Gates Mills Boulevard, which really stabilized our stormwater and flooding situation on Gates Mills. That made it, which is what we had told was going to be happening to the regional ODNR, that project was coming to fulfillment and that they could rely that this park and this path was going to be, possible because we were having that addressed. And to that, our thanks to the Regional Sewer District for working so closely with the city for the benefit of our residents and that stormwater management. We had the County Planning Commission present, Mary Serby, Elaine Price, Metro Parks was represented, all of whom were supporting our city when it came time for the ODNR grant to be considered. We had our Cuyahoga County Council member, Meredith Turner, who was so supportive of us when Don and I went and testified before the county council in order to secure the $250,000 gateway grant from ARPA funds. So there were, we see what happens here in our chambers, but there were so many wonderful people and agencies and who supported the initiative of Pepper Pike to succeed in this project. The path itself should be completed by early November or late November. The Lander Trail, of course, you've seen underway. We discussed that a little tonight already. That should be completed and hooking up by early November, November 1st or thereabouts. The planting that council, and again, we thank you for supporting it, for the park execution. Will be partially planted this year, followed up in the springtime with the rest of the planting. So we are well underway. We received some wonderful media coverage for in the region for the success of Pepper Pike that we can all be proud of. Coming up on October 1st, we will be having our centennial dedication in the park. I really hope that some of council can participate. I understand, October 1st, unfortunately, is a weekday. So you don't have July 4th and July 9th. Our October 1st is our centennial, official centennial. We'll be, among the things we'll be doing are tree planting and the burial of the time capsule. And I hope members of council can be present to grab a shovel and help us accomplish this marked occasion.
What was that
for our
time?
city.
What was that time again?
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. We will be having on October 6th our Harvest Fest, annual Harvest Fest. I suppose we can call it our Centennial Harvest Fest. And at that, of course, typically the children and all kick it off at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon with their pumpkin painting and other activities. The Harvest Fest dinner is at 6 o'clock, I believe. But tickets are necessary. Tickets officially 5 o'clock. Tickets officially have closed. If anyone in this immediate room still needs a ticket, please reach out first thing in the morning and we'll see if we can't get the vendor to accommodate some ads to the list. It's a catered event and they need to plan, they need their numbers. And that's why it gets cut off the way it does. A little addition to this year, at 1 o'clock that afternoon, there'll be a Bike with the Mayor opportunity. So all the mayor needs to do is get a bicycle now, and we'll be all set. And it's going to be an hour ride, 4 or 5 miles probably throughout our city, but we're going to try to.
Has the chief been alerted you're going to be riding a bike? So
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
And the emergency squad.
I just rode to Acadia National Park on a bike. I can do it.
Way to go, Rick.
Rick, I think I still have a big wheel. Big wheel,
But if anyone on council has a bike and you want to join in on this, you're very welcome. I have a bike, but it's my Grand Prix Raleigh 10-speed that I purchased in 1973.
I have one of those.
And I'm concerned that my tires are dry rotted at this
You might
point.
want to upgrade. You might want to upgrade.
It worked around 6 years ago, the last time I rode it, but I'm going to look for something more upgraded, as you say. But that should be a lot of fun, and I hope we get a lot of residents out. We're going to probably ask Chief, the MERC team maybe, or the CERT team rather, to maybe man a couple intersections. We can talk about how we're going to handle that. And we'll get it done. Working with a couple of our firefighters who are extremely active cyclists and to help plot out an interesting path through Pepper Pike. And hopefully the point is to touch on a few of our historic areas. We're going to avoid 91 and the Orange Hill and all those spots, but there are lots of other areas we'll be able to ride through. And I think it'll be a lot of fun for an hour or so to take that bike ride. So I urge everyone to come.
At City Hall? Starts
Beg
here.
pardon?
Starts here.
Starts here at City Hall. Thank you. Starts and ends here. If it ends sooner for someone, that's not a good thing. And that's really what I have to say this evening. Thank you. Council, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I would like to mention that this upcoming weekend is the Centennial Celebration for Orange Schools, which is a super event for not just our community, but all the communities around us. It's going to include a fun fest and a tailgate and a parade down Chagrin. So I saw that there are signs up reminding everybody not to go through there at certain times. So, be mindful of that. It's a little bit of a throwback to the Orange Jubilee days. I remember decorating my bike and my dad putting it in the station wagon and taking us up to Landerwood Plaza and going down Sugar. I'm really excited for the event. So there's a football game. The high school is going to be open the next day. There's going to be fireworks after the game, and there's a fun run on Sunday. So if anybody's interested, there are details on the Orange Schools website, which is orangeschools.org. If you want to look, register for anything, but really should be another fabulous celebration in the community. And I might be having a certain class reunion this weekend too. I won't mention how many years, but it should be good to reconnect with old friends. So
I think a lot of people I've heard are going to head up there. So
yeah, they're expecting a good crowd. I think it's really exciting.
I know
Good
that
planning.
we're going to have our police and fire department participating in the parade. I'm participating in the parade along with the mayors of all the other communities.
Super.
So it should be a nice event.
Really fun event.
And the football team's doing really well, and the band is amazing. So if anybody,
And Donna Kelsey may be there for a photo op during the game if we have any.
as a fundraiser,
As a fundraiser for the Alumni Association. She
And
is
I heard she's bringing Taylor Swift.
I believe instead of the
That would
Orange
be a good
Band, I think
fundraiser.
that is false news.
it would be a great fundraiser though.
Yeah, but really fun time.
The Democratic.
Tony?
I don't recall whether I mentioned this at the last meeting, but I wanted to, it bears repeating if I did. As some of you may know, my wife had a spill and broke a couple of bones, and she was unable to walk to the car, so we couldn't drive up to Hillcrest. So I called 911, and our fire rescue people were there in 5 minutes or less. Were very kind and very helpful, and got her over to Hillcrest. And it was the first time I've ever had to use that service, and it was awesome.
That's
Great.
great. That's really nice to hear.
Sorry to hear about her.
I'm glad that we're being fiscally responsible and getting that other bid. So thank you, Dawn. I was just wondering if there was an opportunity to maybe get another architect to look at our city hall to try to figure out if there's anything somebody else looking at it might recommend. I don't know if that's something. So 1.3 seems like a lot of money. And we're spending so much on other things that I worry that we're just spending too much money. So if we could do some improvements and maybe get a fresh look at it. So that's my request. And then also we're getting towards the fall and holidays. Can we look at our council meeting dates for the rest of the year? Some of them fall on holidays, like specifically the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and the
Christmas
Day that it falls on. If there's any way to adjust that now so we can better plan.
Yeah, I spoke to council members. They talked about that earlier this evening, in fact, and we're going to try to, as we're looking at the date of the budget meeting, we're going to try to bundle all this together with some date suggestions. So we'll probably, hopefully be addressing all that in October.
Okay.
Same as
I have one more. I think Kathy's suggestion for another set of eyes and an architect might be a good idea. Because it is, and we're getting into something that could be $1,800,000, and so a fresh set of eyes might be helpful.
And you know, including maybe some more interaction with Council and ABR. They seem to have some really valuable input, and it was heartening to me to hear what they had to say. I think that could be useful, especially because we want to be ready to do other projects, and we know that the economy doesn't always, it's not always good times. We've seen that before, so we want to be.
He mentioned another company that did a lot of reworking, like the Stern. I don't know, RH Stern. I don't know.
No, I have to, let me just say, Bylowski is extremely familiar with this building. We have now spent upwards to $40,000 for the 2 iterations. I do not recommend that we seek out another, as you heard from, I don't know that bringing someone else in where they're starting from zero is even going to come in at a $20,000 level. There is a lot of preliminary due diligence that any architect looking at it would have to do that we sort of skipped ahead with Paul simply because he's been so involved with these buildings for so many years. I think you did hear how favorably impressed our two ABR architects were with the work, be it one way or the other, and that they were anxious to continue to work with Paul about it. It's up to council. You talk about not needlessly spending money. I don't think getting another architect involved at this point is an advisable thing to do. It's just money, I suppose. If council wants to we can get 5 more architects looking at it. But I think we have a couple of good alternatives here to work with. That's all I'm saying.
I think what's happening possibly is, whether we should get a new architect or try and work with this plan with ABR and other people, is that, and this has happened before, but council wasn't involved at the outset. So in the visioning of what we wanted or needed, we ended up with a plan, and now we're told, well, here's your plan, and we'll try and rework it. But I heard something a little different from Hassan when he was here, having to do with needs and space and usage of our current space. Now, maybe it would have still ended up where we were, but it would be a more comfortable feeling for me if we had gone through a process that way, in a more meticulous, thought out way, envisioning what our needs were, or if this building could be used differently. Similarly, and this is kind of taking a little bit of a right turn, I would like to get the calendar, and I know last year Emmy proposed a calendar early in the year, and it's hard at this point. I personally already have some dates set this winter, and meetings set and appointments set, and I am unaccustomed to not being able to change a meeting, which is currently set on Christmas, that we knew was not going to happen, or one the week of Thanksgiving that we know is also not going to happen. I really would like to propose down the road, not this year, I understand we are where we are, if we could possibly do a meeting either depending where Thanksgiving falls, the very end of November, the very beginning of December, put it on the calendar and work with Steve to try and make sure he can be there, just so we can know when our date is. We potentially have this big gap on the calendar towards the year end, and also it seems abnormal to me to not plan those dates ahead. We can always cancel in a meeting, but I just would really love to set the calendar. It could be in February. I don't mind, but. So that and one other thing on an upside, a kind of kudos, because I don't know if it got mentioned. Just again, tremendous appreciation to the service department for everything they did for the groundbreaking. I mean, they were standing there in the drizzle that then became rain. I mean, they set up. They stayed after everybody was running away with their hoods on, and it was a really lovely event. It made me feel proud to. This is just like my little personal gratitude. Proud to work with all of you. I know everybody put so much thought into the details of this project. Things we liked, things we didn't like, but everyone was committed to making it as good as possible. And it's a proud moment to be able to work with you on this. So it was nice to see it, and I can't wait for the actual kind of unveiling of the path, which will be, I think, prettier than the mud.
I got one other comment. Just you reminded me, Melanie and Kathy, this is not part of the charter review, but in the charter review comments, a couple council people mentioned scheduling for next year and whether we should have meetings week on week like we have now. It's always struck me that having a meeting and the meeting right away really jams the agenda and makes it hard to notice and deliberation. And I'm wondering if there's any sentiment in council that putting a break, trying to schedule for next year, a meeting, say the 2nd and the 4th, rather than the 3rd and the 4th, Wednesday
No,
of month.
Wait a minute.
Actually, there's some input from Orange Village that they'd like to move away from the back-to-back meetings. So maybe I could be here the second and the fourth, and there the first and the third, but I think it's something that there's interest on both sides.
Does everyone, is there a consensus that that would be a better thing for?
Yeah, let me tell you what a potential problem with that is. By having the meetings in the back end of the month, or at least in one segment of the month, people are able to schedule their vacation calendars. It's gonna, if you stick these meetings on both sides of the month, you're gonna see a lot more absences, I think, because we're not gonna be able to say, okay, if I go on vacation, I'm going the first 2 weeks of the month.
From your staff members, you're saying?
And I haven't missed a council meeting in 13 years.
Yeah, because
I have, always scheduled my holidays knowing that we have the third and the fourth.
There are a lot of
Wednesday.
people taking 2-week vacations. Like, I'm jealous.
Either way.
But isn't a vacation when the city gives up an interest in the public street? That's what a vacation, I don't know.
Anyway, just something, we can talk about it.
I
And
understand,
something
but
to think about.
the benefits from having the gap in terms of more time to get the agenda out, more time to think about things, to deliver things. And to the extent we ask for something, more time for the staff to get
To
that
provide
thing
it.
done, that have 2 weeks, not 1 week. I just see a lot of benefits to having that spread out rather than week on week. So
And if occasionally someone misses a meeting, I think the benefit to having the extra time in between would outweigh the occasional absence, in my opinion.
my view too.
Yeah. I think that it could be scheduling much more productive, that we would
I
have
agree.
that time to kind of let things.
So maybe, and I can work with you, Amy, on this. I know you.
I
a
love
lot-
scheduling.
Okay.
I just do.
I know.
And
Well,
it's
you're an
something that I've been
expert.
trying to do.
So,
and-
but because it's already September.
Yeah.
And to Melody's point about getting things on the calendar, I'd like to just propose this and see how that sorts out. But actually, let's take a calendar and here's the Wednesdays for next year for meetings and just see if we can plan around that and see what, I mean, I know there's going to be logistical issues because we're changing a practice, but the benefits are pretty strong and I'd like to just see if we can give that a
I
go.
think we need to start with Steve Byron.
Yeah.
Let me take that back to Orange Village. Do you have a preference? If you could pick it today, would you like first and third or second and fourth?
Second and fourth.
Second and fourth.
Second and fourth. Okay.
Because we did.
But it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But it doesn't
Okay.
really matter.
One thing that it would allow for, which we still could do even if we didn't do it, I know I throw it out all the time. Oh, please, go ahead.
I'm just thinking of planning and zoning, and I think that it would be challenging just for us to think about when that meeting occurs, that then somebody who is serving on that, you would have like 3 weeks out of the month that they would be required for meetings.
Yeah,
I just want to logistically I'm sorry to interrupt you, Melanie.
Well, maybe
Or-
why don't you, just maybe, let's put this on a
Something-
calendar.
yeah.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, that's all,
Such
like,
an
just
excited person, but it would be helpful to me actually if they were the same week.
right.
But and just something else related to us doing this or even not doing this. You know, I've thought about it a lot. I think I mentioned it once before, but now I've been here longer. So, you know, some of our problems could be helped by doing things on. I've done this before in other seats on two readings. I know some things we require to do on 3 readings, but just do one kind of like for review. And you just put it out there. Any questions? You can ask questions, but put it out there. That way we get all our documents in front of us. And it's a little harder because it depends where our meeting falls. With 2 meetings, maybe it's a little easier, but I still think it works. Then you have a week or 2 weeks in between, and then it comes to a vote. It just maybe helps a little bit with agenda management, but it's just a thought. You know, we could test it a little bit. We don't have to do it all out. We could test it with some items and see if it helps our
Well,
process.
But for 2025, I really want to just, let's give this a try. if we
Yeah,
can.
no, this just
Yeah.
this more has to do with, this is kind of attached.
Attached to that?
Attached to that
Okay.
or separate. All it would be is just like, so something on here, I don't know. Like, I guess discussion of City Hall, you know, here's everything, here's a doc, that's not the best example. Usually it'd be more with a contract or
Right.
something. Here's the contract. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, we'll talk about it next meeting. And that way you have this like gap and it's
More time to
more
look at.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's also more transparent to the community who has time to see what we talked about.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Jumping off that, Melanie, something that I had my husband do for me this week, because he's way more technologically savvy than me. He took last week's meeting, put it into like a transcriptor, kind of like Sheila uses, and then had AI write, or ChatGPT write a summary of the meeting. And I reviewed it, and it's pretty basic, but I feel like for people who don't want to either sit here or listen to the meeting the next day, I wonder if there's any sort of appetite for a summary that's, computer generated. So pluses and minuses to that, right? I don't know. Do you guys think that there's any
Sheila, how
any
do you
value
feel
to
about
that?
that? I would ask Sheila.
Right.
That's really her wheelhouse.
So that's right. I guess this would be more a little bit more narrative in structure, not the straight transcript. It's a summary.
No, with the transcript,
Yeah.
it does a summary also.
And is that posted somewhere?
No, because it's
full of
kind
error.
of rough,
Still crude.
raw data
Mm.
kind of thing.
Jackie,
Okay,
Jackie, the
yeah.
only thing I would think about that, I mean, I would love to see this AI
Yeah.
generated. But I wonder if we might get some confusion because we've got minutes and official
Right.
records.
It's just like another
If we
thing.
throw in another
Yeah.
look at it, we may create some confusion.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I just wasn't, I
But I would love
was
to
curious
see-
to see what came out of it. And then
Yeah.
I was curious,
I would love
is
to
there
see that,
interest
but
in that?
We'd have to be sure that we knew which were the official
Right,
minutes. and
right,
which
right,
were-
right.
Other cities do have the meetings transcribed.
Yeah.
Beechwood, it's online and it's computer generated. I don't know if they have the minutes like Sheila does,
Mhm.
which is great for me to look at. But it is kind of hard if you're trying to find something on that video or the audio to figure out where exactly are. And I fast forward too much because there's not enough, and
Yeah.
I waste a lot of time trying to figure out.
I wish that would be something that is, at least at some point, maybe AI could.
Yeah, but
like
it's
bookmark certain spots.
you have to
in the
pay
video.
for that technology. It's out there for council
it?
meetings,
Gotcha.
and it'll timestamp it on which agenda item
Yeah, that's what I was
it is.
That would be
And so
nice.
there are services you just have to pay for it.
I like.
I feel like that would be,
So, which is nice.
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but Beechwood
nice.
definitely has it.
And you, okay, so in Beechwood uses that
Yes.
timestamping technology?
Yes,
Okay.
and it
That
correlates
was-
to
that
their
was-
agenda and documents.
That's kind of nice.
Okay. And then secondly, I just want to take a second and, really recognize the mayor and Don being at that, and really everyone who's working here every day, being at that groundbreaking on Monday and the number of people and agencies that were there represented. I didn't even know half these agencies existed, but just that's such a testament to the relationships that you guys cultivate day in and day out and the time you take to do it. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You're here.
I have one last comment, and I reached out to a couple people about it. I've seen people walking. I know there is so much enthusiasm for the trails on Lander, but I have witnessed residents walking in the construction zone, which is extremely dangerous. There are like metal poles sticking up. It's uneven. It's not safe. I just like a reminder to the community to go out, like, we're just not ready to receive you yet. It's coming and you're going to be able to use it. But I
We
think,
sent that out this week, Emmy.
did it go out? Because,
Oh, yeah.
okay, good. Then it's a friendly reminder. I missed it. Was it via email? Was there a social media post about it? 'Cause I
It's on
didn't
our
see
social
anything.
media.
Was it? Okay. When this is why social media doesn't work all that great, because I talked to you about it and I never saw that post come out. So you don't know what the audience is. Okay. Well, thank you for addressing it, but please wait to use the pass.
Okay. One thing I do want to, I appreciate your comment, Jackie, and it deserves another round of thanks to our service department, and who did such a wonderful job of assembling that event and putting it together. It was just a great job, and it shows how professional and skilled they are at putting these things together efficiently. And I kind of marvel at their ability to do this so quickly and just so great. And it creates such a nice feel to the events, and we're very fortunate to have that team working with us. All right, any audience comments? Vera?
Vera Bar Savage, 29600 Shaker Boulevard. I want to echo that about to John and the mayor and everybody. The celebration was wonderful and a long time coming to get that trail in. So, and just to remind everybody, we are having a Lander Road groundbreaking, not groundbreaking, but a ribbon cutting on Saturday. So everybody's invited. So we are at Summit Lane and Lander Road at 11 a.m. Thank you. And hope everybody can join us.
Thank you. Anyone else? William?
William Thompson, 30500 Providence. Sheila and I made eye contact when we were talking about the YouTube markers. I checked it out. When you write the description of a YouTube, you can, in the description, you can put special markup like 1 minute and 30 seconds, meeting starts, 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Chief makes a good joke about, whatever you want, right? It's line, and they call them chapters. And when you watch the YouTube, because I had the same problem you do. When you watch them, like, I just want to jump to the part where we talked about NOPEC. I don't know where that was because it wasn't here, but the chapters click, boom, jumps you right to that spot and you can watch the bit that you care about. It's not as hyper detailed as a minute by minute transcript, but at least it gets you to the 7 minutes that you care about. So Sheila and I had talked about doing that before, and for fun, we could play with a little prototype just to show you. It's a fairly simple step, but I think would be in the right direction. So food for thought. Would you like? So,
Thank you.
second thing, sorry.
Happy to take advantage of your IT skills, sir.
Okay, great. Well, I Googled it though. Fair enough.
It's your living, I understand.
Yes, it's something I don't know, so I looked it up. There you go. I've been coming off to meetings off and on for about a year. I gotta say, I'm noticing a pattern that, I want to thank our professionals and experts and people that work very, very hard to bring information, which I'm sure is as soon as they can bring it, with as much detail as is useful to discuss. But at some point, the first time getting the information is the first time getting the information. I think we all agree that getting information earlier would always be better, of course. But at some point, this just is what it is. Like, and we deal with that in all professions and all walks of life, that you're going to get information at an inconvenient time. But I close with an openly wondering, isn't that the nature of the job that you're doing, to get information when you can get it, process it, and act accordingly? So that's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Neff?
Manny Neff, Sound Center Road. Just to follow up on that, just I'm going over some history. The Gates Mills Boulevard Trail and the walkability, within the city. I'll take my mask off so it's easier for you to hear. To go back to February 17th of 2021 is when the first time the Gates Mills Boulevard item came in to discussion. And it came in during the first reading, asking council to sign off on a $1.2 million program. Council pushed back at that meeting and said, we want a survey of the residents. And that led into survey number 1, where they said after that was done, which wasn't approved by council, they wanted to know what the real overall walkability was for the city. And that's what should be discussed on here. And then that ended up with survey number 2, and then followed up with survey number 3, and then finally going to a vote. And with that, this is how the whole process of addressing for decades the requests from residents for walkability in the city. Okay, and just looking independently at one item, Gates Mills Boulevard Trail was not the way to do it. Commend council for saying they wanted a survey that was neutral. They gave everybody both sides of the question, and everybody was able to look at the entire package as a whole. Because this conversation about the sidewalk, in front of Ursuline College on here, had we been able to look at it, and it's easy, no hindsight on here, was looked at the whole thing in a whole in regards to, we would have caught the sidewalk issue in front of Ursuline, as part of this whole walkability trails, whatever we want to call it. So again, I just want to thank, council for your due diligence and making sure that the data that you got, that you were able to do your due diligence And if you remember, council would not approve, on the first reading, the Gatesville Boulevard Trail, and it finally took until October. So council said, yes, if we get the grant, we will honor it and we will pay, the rest of the $600,000, to finish it on there. So that's the due diligence that, I as a resident, went for. So thank you.
Anyone else? Sir, you had your hand up. Do you have anything? Oh, you did.
Alan Maggie, 31301 Ainsworth. On behalf, I would say, of the people of Ainsworth, we appreciate all the hard work that the council has done and is doing to move forward with this project, because we really, really do appreciate it. And it certainly will be much safer for all those people who use that area all the time. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right, I will then entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the appointment of public officials.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Orange Village is going to discuss the issue.
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned to executive session. When we reconvene, we will not conduct business. We stand on adjournment.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank
Sitting through all this. It's usually not as long as we're proud. Yeah.
So,
We had
whatever
this
the
whole
guy
thing, and then we
said.
had the guy.
Okay,
Like two different ends of
And
the
I agree
spectrum.
with you.
All right.
Last time.
They just, they basically, NOPEC